These movies killed studios, bankrupted directors, and wrecked reputations so badly some actors never worked again. One of these films cost Francis Ford Coppola his studio. Another was so embarrassing, McDonald's publicly disowned it despite financing the damn thing. And one flop was so massive its studio literally collapsed and had to sell itself off. These are career-ending box office bombs of the 80s that Hollywood hoped you'd forget. In the 80s, Ishtar became the ultimate symbol of Hollywood excess gone wrong. Warren Beatty and Dustin Hoffman play these two talentless lounge singers who somehow end up mixed up in this CIA plot in Morocco. On paper, the script was tight and funny, a desert spy comedy, but then the stars got involved. Beatty and Hoffman kept competing over who could do more takes, seriously like 40 takes per scene. Director Elaine May totally lost control. They filmed in the actual Sahara Desert, and the production got so extravagant they reportedly spent around $12,000 a day just on ice, literally just to keep it from melting. Columbia Pictures thought star power alone would save it. They dumped $20 million into marketing. Opening weekend? Barely $4 million. Critics annihilated it. David Denby famously called it the biggest fiasco in film history. Warren Beatty blamed Columbia's new management, said they sabotaged him. This one was supposed to be the next big sci-fi cult thing. Peter Weller stars as Buckaroo Banzai, a neurosurgeon, rock star, comic book hero-type character who fights aliens from another dimension. The film's intentionally weird and packed with in-jokes and references to stuff that doesn't even exist. It's basically a cult movie by design. But 20th Century Fox had no clue how to handle it. The studio refused to market it properly, barely printed enough copies for theaters, never even got a real wide release. Totally bombed at the box office. There was even supposed to be a sequel teased at the end credits called Buckaroo Banzai against the World Crime League, but after that disastrous opening weekend, never happened. Director W.D. Richter never directed another big studio movie after this. But here's the funny thing. It found its audience eventually. Midnight screenings, VHS releases, it got this hardcore cult following. Kevin Smith even spent years trying to bring it back as a TV series, but the rights are still tied up in legal messes. Michael Cimino was fresh off his Oscar win for The Deer Hunter. So United Artists gave him total freedom to make his epic western about Wyoming's Johnson County War, starring Christopher Walken and Chris Christopherson. But Cimino went way overboard. Original budget was around $11 million, ended up ballooning to $44 million, which was insane money back then. Cimino literally built an entire western town, tore it down, rebuilt it, because it wasn't authentic enough. He shot 1.3 million feet of film. Days went by without even getting a minute of usable footage. The first cut of the movie was 5.5 hours long. Critics completely destroyed it. New York Times straight up called it an unqualified disaster. United Artists panicked, pulled it from theaters, then tried re-releasing a shortened 2.5-hour version. Didn't matter. Nobody came. Total box office? Barely $3.5 million against $44 million spent. The movie literally bankrupted United Artists. Studio collapsed and got sold off to MGM. Even now, whenever a director blows way too much money, Hollywood still calls it Heaven's Gate syndrome. Bill Murray starred in this serious dramatic role, adapted from W. Somerset Maugham's novel, plays a traumatized World War I vet who leaves his wealthy, shallow life behind to travel through Europe and India searching for meaning. Murray only agreed to star in Ghostbusters if Columbia Pictures let him make this. They agreed, thinking it would be quick and cheap. It wasn't. Budget climbed fast, shot on location in India and France, and the studio had no clue how to market it. Murray's fans showed up expecting comedy, got tragedy, and deep philosophical themes instead. Critics hated it. Variety flat out said Murray was totally wrong for the role, and audiences openly laughed at it in the wrong way. When it flopped, Murray took it personally. He literally disappeared from Hollywood for 4 years, moved to Paris, studied philosophy, totally avoided the press. In interviews years later, he admitted it hurt worse than anything he'd done before. But Columbia didn't care. Ghostbusters made almost $300 million the same year, so they just considered The Razor's Edge an acceptable loss. This movie was basically Universal's big gamble after Walter Hill's huge success with 48 Hours. Michael Pare stars as this tough rock and roll mercenary who has to rescue his famous ex-girlfriend, a singer played by Diane Lane, from a biker gang led by Willem Dafoe. And Dafoe's character wears vinyl overalls just in case things weren't weird enough already. It's set in some kind of alternate, neon-soaked version of the 1950s, a rock and roll fable, according to the opening title card. Universal gave it a big budget, $14.5 million, and built this huge city set right on their backlot, mixing 1950s style with 80s music. They were even planning it as the first part of a trilogy. But then the movie opened 2 weeks after Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and it got absolutely crushed at the box office. Only made $8 million domestically, totally killed any plans for sequels. Critics didn't really know how to react either. Roger Ebert famously said it was all flash, no soul. Universal blamed Pare's acting for the flop, but insiders admitted the studio just had no clue how to market this crazy rock opera mashup with no big stars. Another massive flop from the 80s, this time directed by Terry Gilliam, famous for films like Brazil. It's about a crazy old adventurer telling impossible stories while a European city is under siege. You've got flying ships, trips to the moon where Robin Williams plays a floating head, and basically just one wild, chaotic fantasy sequence after another. Columbia Pictures gave Gilliam about $23 million initially, but Gilliam completely lost control of the production. Typical for him, honestly, and the budget exploded to $46 million. Producers secretly raised extra money behind Columbia's back just to stop them from shutting the movie down. Everything went wrong. Strikes, weather disasters, actors quitting. By the time filming wrapped, Columbia had new management who absolutely hated the movie and basically buried it in theaters. Only released in about 117 cinemas, barely made $8 million total. Instant bomb. Robin Williams had such a bad time with Gilliam he refused to have his real name on it. He's credited as Ray D. Tudo. The movie was nominated for 4 Oscars for stuff like costumes and art direction, but it completely wrecked Gilliam's reputation. He later said clearly this movie made him lose everything except his house. This is one of the most shameless movies ever made. Basically, a kid in a wheelchair becomes friends with this goofy-looking alien stuck on Earth. They spend the whole movie running from NASA agents, reuniting the alien with his family, all while constantly drinking Coke and hanging out at McDonald's. That's literally the entire movie. Funded entirely by private investors connected directly to McDonald's and Coca-Cola, the film even has a whole dance scene shot inside a real McDonald's. Ronald McDonald himself dances in it. But after critics roasted it as nothing but a 90-minute McDonald's commercial, even McDonald's publicly distanced themselves from it. The movie made just barely $6 million at the box office, didn't even cover marketing. It disappeared almost instantly from theaters. Nobody from this film ever recovered, and Jade Caligari, the kid in the wheelchair, literally never acted again after this. So here's one of the strangest and most expensive flops ever. A World War II epic starring Laurence Olivier as General Douglas MacArthur, focusing specifically on the Battle of Inchon during the Korean War. The weirdest part? The movie was funded by the Unification Church, Reverend Sun Myung Moon's group. They dumped about $30 million into it, hoping it'd serve as pro-America, pro-MacArthur propaganda, while also pushing Moon's religious views. Filmed in South Korea, everything went wrong instantly. Equipment literally sinking into mud, actors refusing to return for reshoots, and Olivier was supposedly drunk most of the time. The budget ballooned up to around $46 million, making it one of the most expensive films ever at that point. When MGM finally released it, they basically just dumped it quietly, barely made $5 million. Critics absolutely shredded it. Roger Ebert called it the most expensive B-movie ever made. The Unification Church was so embarrassed they literally tried buying back prints just to bury it. It vanished so completely, for decades it was practically lost. Olivier himself later called making the movie a mistake. Francis Ford Coppola basically risked everything on this musical romance about a couple who split up and fantasize about different lives during one surreal night in Las Vegas. Coppola was determined to shoot this at his own brand new Zoetrope Studios. He literally recreated Vegas entirely on indoor sound stages, backlighting entire cityscapes, and using cutting-edge video technology to pre-visualize every shot. Budget started at about $15 million but ballooned to $26 million. Coppola personally borrowed money to pay for all the overages. When it premiered, critics hated it. Vincent Canby from the New York Times famously called it empty-headed and childish. Audiences stayed far away, made less than $1 million total in the US. Coppola's studio immediately went bankrupt. He lost a fortune, and basically spent the entire next decade directing movies like The Outsiders and The Cotton Club just to pay off his debts. Now, years later, people see it as visually groundbreaking, but Coppola still calls it the film that ruined my life. This was supposed to kick off a whole action franchise. Barry Bostwick as the leader of an elite international fighting force, zooming around in high-tech motorcycles and weaponized dune buggies. But the vehicles, though they were real, barely worked. One motorcycle stunt failed so miserably they actually had to animate it later with cheesy visual effects. Directed by Hal Needham, fresh off Smokey and the Bandit, but Needham wasn't exactly an effects guy. The production blew tons of money on custom-painted suits and vehicles, many of which literally fell apart mid-shoot. Mattel was even going to do a big toy line, but when they saw early footage, they immediately bailed. Summer 1982, it opened directly against E.T. and Blade Runner, so obviously nobody cared. Didn't even make enough to cover the vehicle budget alone, and critics trashed it completely.